127. Fantasy as Law. The age of humanism has been marked by a pronounced will to fiction, a desire to live in a dream world. To a degree unequalled in all history, modern man immerses himself in fantasy and fiction, in novels, films, television, and daily fantasies. He lives in a realm of fantasy. But this is not all. Politics is converted into efforts to try to enact dreams into reality by legislative fiat. In the realm of economics, the same is also true, as in education and other areas. Of late, a rash of books and articles have stressed the supposed value and importance of fantasy and sex. It would appear from these writings that the only possible way modern man can realize himself sexually is to indulge in wild fantasies. The more bizarre and lawless the fantasy, the greater the stimulation and the greater the sexual experience. The essence of the fantasy is sin, lawlessness, and reality must match the fantasy. Thus, basic to the sexual revolution, if the magazines which are its voice are to be believed, are two factors. First, sex must be, quote, free, end quote, which really means that it must be lawless, sinful. It means freedom from morality for the purpose of sinning. Second, even in the exercise of that freedom to sin, the fact of lawless sex is not enough. There must be added to it the ingredient of fantasy in order to make the experience, quote, valid, end quote. Is this an overstatement? Two sociologists writing in the American Journal of Psychiatry reported a singular lack of interest in marital sex by young married couples. The situation was serious enough for we to ask, is there sex after marriage? And to answer, sometimes. A third of the couples had stopped all sexual activity for periods averaging 8 months. Of the non-abstaining couples, aged 18 to 24, the average was only 3 times a week. The letters printed in such periodicals as Penthouse are strong on fantasy and probably low on reality. We's, quote, sex tape letters, end quote, are revelatory of this will to fantasy. One Milwaukee secretary wrote, I spent most of my day typing for an office of lawyers, and the only thing that saves me from mindless boredom is my sexual fantasies. Now, to examine fantasy in a radically different realm, let us consider briefly the implications of James Nathan Miller's article on America's federal dams. The collapse of the Teton Dam in Idaho, June 5, 1976, took 14 lives and damaged or destroyed property to a value of $400 million. The dam was built on a faulty site, in an earthquake region, without strain gauges, with a too rapid fill, and with other instances of neglect or faulty construction. Moreover, since 1950, it's admitted that 37 other large dams have been built without various necessary strain gauges. Moreover, serious questions have been raised about many other federal dams. Why? The federal agency responsible, quote, felt that nothing could happen inside those dams that would require instruments to detect, end quote. That trained engineers and geologists would be guilty of such careless construction indicates more than corruption. They live in a dream world without consequences. Hegel expressed it clearly. The rational is the real. What modern man in his fantasies decides is reasonable for his purposes becomes for him reality. To illustrate from still another area, it has become increasingly apparent that much of contemporary scientific experimentation is fraudulent. Dr. Richard W. Roberts, director of the National Bureau of Standards, has estimated that at least Half of the results in all published scientific papers are unusable because there is no evidence that the data used were reliable. Dr. Leroy Woolens, an Iowa State University psychologist, found even more serious deficiencies. Dr. Woolens authorized one of his students to write to 37 authors of recent scientific reports in psychology journals and to ask for the raw data upon which the report's authors had based their conclusion. Of the 32 scientists who replied to the request, 21 said that their data either had been lost or accidentally destroyed. But 9 researchers did send copies of their data. Dr. Woolens, an expert in statistics, analysed 7 of the 9 submissions, and he found that 3 of the 7 contained errors invalidating what had been published as fact. Moreover, the most common consequence of a discovered fraud was nothing. In many cases, the person perpetuating the fraud was actually promoted. In a famous case, Sir Cyril Burt apparently fabricated theories of inherited intelligence differences which affected the educational and legal systems of England for the past 30 years and influenced the world course of psychology. These and other examples of like conduct in other areas clearly involve fraud, but basic to that fraud is fantasy. When men forsake God, fantasy replaces reality. In Genesis chapter 6 verse 5 we are told, "And God saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every imagination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually." Imagination here includes rational thought, which is apostate and hence guilty of fantasy, because it begins with man rather than God, and also all frauds by man, whereby man acts on the belief that sin can succeed and that God can be mocked. It included also the dangerous realm of fantasizing and reshaping the world after our imagination, which is what all sin attempts to do. The denial of God is the denial of reality, which is his creation, and is the affirmation of fantasy. With the denial of God, fantasy politics, economics, education, religion, and all things else become preferred to God's reality. Consider the implications of fantasy sex. To judge by the Sexual Revolution magazines, men and women can only have sexual relations, in or out of marriage, by resorting to fantasy. Sexual stimulation is thus essentially from the fantasy rather than the living partner. This means that an imagined person is better than the real person, that the creation of our minds is more to our liking than God's creation. In brief, it means that men arrogate to themselves the role of creator because God's world cannot please them in and of itself. It follows thus that sex, religion, politics, economics, science, as witness evolution, and all things else must be turned into areas where man's fiat governs and man's fantasy is declared to be reality. The rational is the real for all such men. Law too becomes fiat law, fantasy law, because it is basic to sin to play God and to fantasize about a new world created by the mind of man. It is no longer necessary to go to an amusement park or to Disneyland to enter into a world of fantasy. This can be done far more systematically and rigorously in most courts of law. The love of fantasy is important in understanding the war against property. Property means responsibility. It means accountability, work, and stewardship. Men who want a fiat world refuse to accept the world of property because it is a world of consequences and work, of time, of yesterday, today, and tomorrow, and duties in terms of time. The love of fantasy involves a desire for detachment from such a gross reality as property. Hence, the fantasizers declare in various ways that property must be destroyed. But the only real world is God's world, and the only possible life is not that created by fantasy, but that which God ordains. Hence, the love of fantasy is the love of death, because it means a rejection of life and the world as God orders it. As wisdom declares, "But he that sinneth against me wrongeth his own soul. All they that hate me love death." Proverbs chapter 8, verse 36. Meanwhile, in the world of Hegel, in the mind of modern man, the source of law is fantasy, and hence the crisis of the modern age. The Christian cannot be indifferent to this. As St. Paul tells us in 2 Corinthians chapter 10, verses 4 to 6. "For the weapons of our warfare are not carnal, but mighty through God to the pulling down of strongholds, casting down imaginations and every high thing that exalted itself against the knowledge of God, and bringing into captivity every thought to the obedience of Christ, and having a readiness to revenge all disobedience when your obedience is fulfilled." Paul says, first, that our weapons, our instruments in defending and propagating our faith, are not human weapons. Our reliance is not on human resources, but on the power of the Almighty and Sovereign God. Second, our weapons in the Lord are powerful and effectual. They can tear down fortresses of the mind and destroy the world of fantasy. All who set their minds against the truth of God are destroyed by God's power. Third, every thought, or mind, is brought into captivity to Christ. Both human reason and the products of human reason are to be captured by the faithful for Christ. Fourth, God's truth and justice must be maintained and enforced over the world of fantasy, to shatter and to subjugate it. Thus, all disobedience, all vain imaginations will be avenged by God, and all obedience blessed. The goal of fantasy is to make fantasy law. Fantasy as law is what modern man is attempting to realize. As a result, when humanists talk about the rule of law, they are to a great degree talking about the rule of fantasy. Christians cannot be indifferent to this. Either they stand in terms of biblical law, or they shall become the subjects of fantasy law. To stand in terms of Christian faith requires the casting down of imaginations of every stronghold of modern humanistic man's world of fantasy.